Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, or Yakuza 8, RGG 8, Like a Dragon 8, whatever you want to call it, was obviously the 8th entry in the Like a Dragon series. It was a direct sequel to the first turn-based RPG of this series, Yakuza Like a Dragon, and probably at some point in this year, or after the next turn-based game releases, this statement will become irrelevant, but there's always been a lot of, let's just say, disagreements regarding this game. Most of them lean towards the "this is the worst game ever made" crowd. And so now that it's been a year since its initial release, I thought to just look back on it and see exactly what it did or didn't do. Now the reason why I said that statement might become irrelevant is because as of the time of this video, this is the most recent game in the RGG franchise that has actually been released, but next month, as you might know, we are getting a brand new game. And a lot of people on the internet, I'm not sure why, perhaps there's a hidden point leaderboard I don't understand and this gets you a lot of points, but they like to think that everything new is automatically bad. But are they right with this one? Well, let's start by looking at the most important aspect of the game and the thing I care about the most, the gameplay. So considering this is a turn-based RPG, something I'll do is look at the gameplay in two ways. One way is how it improved over its predecessor, and the other way is looking at what other RPGs have done and see how it compares to what Infinite Wealth did. Now first of all, I'll say this. In fairness to RGG, it was their first RPG. Well, yes, it's all well and good, but to be honest, Like a Dragon, as I'll call it in this video, was kinda like a group of people just throwing darts at a series of dartboards while completely blind, but also the darts are actually just non-sticky Nerf darts because nothing really worked and everything was completely random. I still enjoyed my time with the game, but my god, they really did not spend much time with the balancing. And so that's the first Infinite Wealth thing I'll bring up. The balancing. Quick balancing thing I'll get out of the way is that your character levels are much more important in this game, and so because of that, you can actually be both underleveled and overleveled. In Like a Dragon, you could be level 30 fighting a level 50 boss, or be level 70 fighting a level 50 boss, and in all honesty, both fights would take just about as long. Yes, it does mean that sometimes you will be needing to level up more, but it also means that if you went and leveled up more, you'll actually stand a better chance. But with this balancing section, I mostly mean balancing of skills that your party members can use, as well as the balancing between party members or between jobs or whatever. There was actual thought put into it. Well, not that much thought, but still someone on the team at least did sit down one afternoon and had a little ponder about where to fix things. To show the most prominent example of Like a Dragon's ridiculous balancing, the move Head Trauma was easily one of the most broken skills in the whole series. Sure, there might be attacks that are stronger than it, but it's the fact that it's supposed to be one of the weakest, and yet is stronger than almost every move in the game, is what makes it so broken. This was because the power of a move, as well as its MP cost, was just some randomly selected value because who cares, video game. In Infinite Wealth, however, almost every single power value and the MP cost was consistent between each skill. But unfortunately, yes, I do mean almost every, because there were still some that disrespected the rules. All the values are kinda confusing, and I have a big long video all about a lot of this game's balancing if you want to help me justify spending like 10 years making that video by watching it later. But anyway, long story short, if you have, say, 5 different skills that deal light damage all on the same character without altering their stats between each hit, they should all deal the same amount of damage as each other within a rough range of plus or minus 5%. The MP cost as well should remain the same, but some skills might cost more MP because they have an additional effect, such as being an area of effect attack, or buffing you / debuffing an enemy, or some sort of other beneficial effect. There were many attacks that also had no special effects beyond them applying the attributes of your weapon, which means that a standard attack could deal fire damage if you have a fire weapon, or it could do something like have a chance to raise your stats if your weapon allows for that. The game also has multi-hit attacks, but they work differently to something like Pokemon. You see, a multi-hit move in Pokemon, like the move Bullet Seed, hits 2 to 5 times depending on how lucky you get, with each hit having a base power of 25, and so if you get all 5 hits off, you theoretically have a base 125 power move. It doesn't deal 125 damage, and there's all sorts of other stats and values to consider and whatever, but regardless, back in Infinite Wealth, if we were to imagine all light skills as having, say, a base power of 50, a multi-hit move that hits 3 times does not have 150 as its theoretical base power, considering every hit of a multi-hit is supposed to hit. Instead, it just divides that base 50 power amongst its 3 hits. It's not perfectly divided into thirds, but it does add up to around the same damage as any other light skill. But once again, there were some exceptions to all of this. A few things that seemed to slip through the cracks, but fortunately not at all to the extent of Like a Dragon. Some multi-hits, for example, actually seemed to work like its Pokemon. Other moves just straight up had mislabeled power values. Some moves that were supposed to apply your weapon's attributes seemed to just not do that, and some skills would cost more or less MP with no real discernible reason as to why they did. There were fortunately only a few examples of all this, and I would show these prime examples, but to be completely honest with you, it's been so long that I discovered all of these outliers that I forgot which ones did what, and I don't want to go through all the effort of this video again, so Yeah, even though things were all much clearer in Infinite Wealth compared to Like a Dragon, it still was a little hard to keep track of things. Another thing that initially I thought Infinite Wealth fixed, but turns out they actually made worse, was resisting and being weak to certain attack types. I was so excited when I saw how they redecorated them in the demo. In Like a Dragon, there was no way at all of telling how much an enemy resisted a certain attack type, especially given the inconsistencies of the damage between all skills, but that was because anywhere from 1 to 100% resistance would say resist whenever an attack landed, which we know from being able to see that value on our own party members where the same rule applies. In Infinite Wealth, however, there were no numbers next to the resistances. It just said resist. Going back to Pokemon, if anything is normally resisted, it'll say not very effective and deal half damage. This is because all resistance is a flat reduction, and it's the same with weakness. If there's a multi-type resistance or weakness, for example, water flying is 4 times weak to electric, it's double, and water grass is double resistant to water, so it's 0.25 times. I had dreams and aspirations that it'd work like that in Infinite Wealth, but guess what? It doesn't. What's worse is that I can't even tell you if jobs that resist an attack type all resist the same amount, because the samurai is apparently 60% resistant to blades, but is this job 60% resistant to fire, or is it like 10%? There is legit no way of knowing without tearing out your hair like I did last year by constantly doing tests over and over again, or going through the game's code. And if you have to go through the game's code to find it, then that means it's in the game, and they could have just displayed it in the first place. There is also still zero way of knowing how much an enemy resists an attack type, or even how weak they are to it. Is that a thing? I'd tell you, but I don't know. And speaking of jobs, there were many elements about the job system that was massively improved over Like a Dragon's. Now I know Dragon Quest has a job mechanic in whichever games, which I can only assume is what Like a Dragon based theirs off of, but I barely put any time into Dragon Quest, so as someone who loves Final Fantasy's job systems like 5 and 12 and Stranger of Paradise to name a few, I remember looking forward to the jobs in the original game, being a bit disappointed, and then enjoying Infinite Wealth more, but still being disappointed. The main reason is that in both games, every job just kind of deals damage with slight variations in how they do it, and that's about it. Even the jobs that are meant to be support roles, like the Idol, can still smack the shit out of enemies. There are no compromises, there are no trade-offs, it's just pick whichever job you want. Who cares? In Like a Dragon, there was also the problem that some jobs dealt damage 1,000 times better than other jobs, and considering those other jobs' only purpose was to deal damage, what was the point in ever using them? So one of the things Infinite Wealth did to improve things was that each job clearly displayed their base stats, basically. Now, some party members naturally had better stats than others, which I think is purely based on how much they start with, like how Namba naturally has more magic than Adachi, so some characters were better than others in certain jobs. But fortunately, because of how the stats work, because of the opportunity to create more unique builds for weapons with the Weaponsmith, and because of the great and wonderful skill inheritance mechanic, anyone could be anything if you really wanted. The skill inheritance allowed you much more freedom with customizing your party, as well as forcing you to make some trade-offs in order to properly optimize your party. Does your party member not have a healing skill? Well, you can level up another job, get a healing skill, and then chuck that skill onto the party member in their initial job. It allowed you to fill in the intentionally made gaps in certain skill lists to create the best team, but honestly, it still wasn't enough. A very recent game that did a great job with the job mechanic was Metaphor ReFantazio. So first of all, the job tree being fully accessible from the pause screen is pretty based, but fortunately Infinite Wealth has some relatively convenient placements of job changing points anyway, so that's fine. But the big thing you can see in Metaphor's tree is advanced jobs, something that even the first Final Fantasy did. Hit the max level on Warrior, well, you're in luck, because now you can become a Sword Master and gain access to a higher tier of skills, as well as usually a unique skill that you can't get on anything else. Hit the max level on Breaker, tough shit, you just wasted however many hours of your life pursuing a worthless purpose because Breaker sucks, but also because there's nothing beyond unlocking all of the skills. In both the turn-based Yakuza games, some jobs just have all high damage skills because you get them later, and others start with weak ones and then just get high damage ones anyway as you progress. But had they have allowed, say, Cabbie to advance into a job like Chauffeur or some shit, the job could have had a more balanced access to skills. Too many skills become useless as time goes on, but with advanced jobs, those useless skills would be left behind in weaker jobs. But those weaker jobs still can be useful because a different party member could level up that weaker one to grab a skill that might be a grapple or something, and just inherit that back into their original job. To access these advanced jobs, they could have made you do specific sub-stories for the different universal ones, and max out the bonds of whichever character for their unique ones, but with Ichiban and Kiryu's, theirs would just be story progression. I mean, imagine Kiryu's going from Dragon to Legend and he gets the original Dragon fighting style. How cool would that have been? Another thing Metaphor did right though was that jobs were much more specialized. All jobs could could kill enemies, but something like the Faker only had debuff skills, whereas the Commander line was mostly all buffs. Allowing all party members to use the character-specific jobs too was just absolutely amazing. The ones from your party members didn't really have any particularly amazing skills that you want to chuck on everyone else, but if you really needed a win skill on everyone for the next boss, everyone could swap to Seeker and either stay as one or just grab the win skill and swap back. And the final thing was passive skills. Something that I can't believe they still didn't think to include in Infinite Wealth was skills that you don't manually activate but would either automatically activate if certain conditions were met, or they would be essentially permanent buffs. For example, something that they could have done in Infinite Wealth was if the Dragon job gained a permanent attack buff whenever a party member would die, and if all three were dead, it'd go up to a 3 stack to have both a unique mechanic for Kiryu and also to connect it in a sort of lore way to him as someone who'll always stay strong in adversity or whatever. And a final thing with jobs is that I feel like Ichiban having 3 unique jobs, and with Freelancer actually being really good up until you start getting really good weapons, of course, Kiryu should have also gotten a 2nd unique job. Sujimancer 1,000,000% should have been a universal job for both genders, don't at me. And of course, Kiryu having his fighting styles compensates for him only having 1 unique job, but imagine if he got the agent style as a job. Now, Gaiden was made after Infinite Wealth, so maybe not that exact agent style, but it still would have been cool. Long story short though, with all the jobs and stuff, I'm not saying Infinite Wealth should have copied specifically Metaphor because it obviously came out way later, but it was an example of putting a bit of thought into things that were more important in the long run compared to Infinite Wealth, where again they just kind of do whatever they want. And a final gameplay thing, which really isn't a criticism, but I'm just putting it out there. I would absolutely love a PvP element in the next one. Given how much customization there was in Infinite Wealth and how it's a turn-based game with no real max level challenge, the ultimate challenge could be other players. It would be a lot of fun, even if worst comes to worst, it's just some friendly invite-only sort of thing. Or if it's like Unicorn Overlord and probably other games, but that's the most recent one I've played that's done this, where you can upload your teams and other players can challenge those teams as AI-controlled enemies. But anyway, there were so many things that they could have gotten right, but they just didn't. And you know what else they didn't get right? The story. It's something talked about a lot. In all honesty, it's probably the main thing people complain about with this game. Beyond, of course, the New Game Plus DLC that people who probably were never going to do a second playthrough anyway complained about, and so instead of just not buying the DLC, they didn't buy the game, which was a very logical and reasonable and a really, worthwhile protest. Anyway, yeah, the story had a lot of complaints. I mean, it doesn't help that it opens up with a promising romance for a Yakuza protagonist. Finally, but never mind, they completely ruined everything, which results in a funny scene right afterwards, but then nothing else about it is funny. It's just kind of sad. The game starts with that, then Ichiban gets cancelled by a VTuber, as we've all experienced, I'm sure. And Sawashiro appears even though everyone expected him to remain in facial scan actor prison forever, and he tells Ichiban that his mum's alive and is chilling in Hawaii. Okay, he says, and he buggers off to Hawaii. Then a bunch of shit happens, there's some Yakuza there that want to kill his mum or something, Kiryu appears, then there's a big American gang and a big Chinese gang, both of whom want to stab Ichiban, as everyone does in these games apparently. Then there's a big shady religion that kind of runs the whole place, and all the while Kiryu has cancer, and he's gonna die, so he goes back to Japan, where now the Seiryu clan is back and they're trying to stab Kiryu in a surprise twist, although they do still want to stab Ichiban. And of course, as he's the primary playable character and turn-based is his whole shtick, Infinite Wealth's an Ichiban game. Until it isn't, of course, because it just eventually becomes a game about Kiryu. That's the basic premise of everything. Now, for the rest of the video, I will be discussing or showing spoilers, so if you're concerned, you should watch one of my other videos instead, so pick any. They're all fucking masterpieces, I totally 100% promise. Anyway, throughout the story, as one might expect, there's lots of twists and turns. And considering this isn't Judgment, and is one of every other Yakuza game, of course these twists range from to shit. For example, one such twist is that they were just like, oh yeah, Arakawa didn't have that one and only love he talked about because he got some other woman pregnant, and long story short, Ichiban, your brother is Johnny Gat from Saints Row. Another one that isn't surprising but is still interesting is that Bryce and the whole religion is bad, but if you pay attention during the first cutscene of the game, you sort of know Bryce is already going to be evil. There was also the seemingly quite interesting Wong To and everything to do with his group that just flies straight out the window because he dies 20 seconds later. Hanuma also suffered the problem of being written for a game just to die, but then the sort of prequel story written later makes him an amazing character, so then he's just kind of wasted like Nishiki in Yakuza 1 existing just to tragically die, but then Zero he's a beast because Gaiden was released before Infinite Wealth but was very clearly written after it. So Hanuma, who in a very cool way was secretly Morinaga from Yakuza 5, just explodes into a million pieces. Fortunately, some characters like Sawashiro were consistently written between games, because even though he seems to not be on your side, he will forever be loyal to Arakawa, so he is on your side. But there was someone like Ichiban who just isn't at all the same character. Eiji, the guy who encourages you to quit playing game and who chills in a wheelchair, secretly was a bad dude who betrays you, and then it really felt like they deleted a bit of a character arc for him of people betraying him, because he just sort of disappears and then reappears very different. But anyway, Ichiban for some reason still trusts him. Now that just doesn't make sense. I mean, Ichiban's not the sort of guy who would forgive someone for trying to get him and all of his friends killed. Like, Ichiban would not be friends with this dude, basically, and yet here he is at the end forgiving him. It's just so weird. And then one of the biggest problems that people have with the story is Chitose. She's one of the party members, and certainly more so than Tomizawa, is one of the most important friendly newcomers in the story. Now, a lot of people, and I mean a lot, really hate her, and I can very easily tell you what the biggest reason for that, which I 100% agree on. It was because it's for the same reason that everyone hates Park from Yakuza 5. It's because she's a woman. Yeah, like, the whole story of Infinite Wealth is super shit, and the whole game sucks, and it's terrible. There's absolutely nothing redeeming about the game at all, because it has a woman who does the wrong thing, but regrets it immensely. It lives with a lot of guilt and tries to make up for it, but... I can already hear you. I already know what you're thinking. Yes, he agrees with us. The hive mind. Infinite Wealth. It's a tragically awful game. He's joined the ranks of everyone else on YouTube who hate the game for all of the very clearly defined and reasonable reasons. Who do you think I am? I am a man capable of my own thoughts, who decides things based on his own free will, and most importantly, who enjoys things even though they're the newest and are popular. I am a man who played Infinite Wealth with my headphones on. I am a man who understands that any and all criticism towards Infinite Wealth are irrelevant, because how the fuck can you possibly criticize a game that has this? Yeah, that's right. I liked Infinite Wealth. Hell, I loved it! I have learned over the course of the last year that apparently I was the only motherfucker on the internet that liked this game. It's a good game! You're allowed to admit that you liked it. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's bad. I don't give a shit if parts of the story were dumb. It was awesome. The new characters are awesome. I love Chitose. I wish she'd stop going first so I could use Burning Arrow, but she was great. Yamai, fun fact, is the GOAT. Name another game with Yamai in it. Oh, wait, exactly. Yeah, that's right. I love the interactions the party members have with each other. I love the feel-good nature of everything, the humor, the happiness, all of it. The gameplay has its problems, but if I'm having fun, I don't care about the bad stuff, because I'm having fun. You know why? Because I go into the Sawashiro fight, he's got his 4 fighting styles, he's tough because I didn't overlevel for 17 hours like everyone else did, he's got cool and fun mechanics, and I hear his themes of Brutality Remix, and my brain explodes when I hear this shit. I get ready to fight some Chinese dude who I barely know, and 83 Keys like, don't worry bro, I got you. There's so many themes that are so good that it could make Pornhub bankrupt from all the brain chemicals I feel when I listen to them. But then it just keeps getting better and better and better, and then boom! Final boss time. He's got a sick intro. He's tough. He's a cool boss fight. I don't care about anything else because... Hang on. Do you hear that? Is that the approaching sounds of Chihiro Aoki? I think it might be because it's the end of Denial. Oh my god. Look, bro, this game, it deserved all of those mega high ratings reviewers gave it. They cooked. They cooked so hard, Zhao would be ashamed of himself. Think about this too. You can move in combat. The customization is based. Basic attacks are actually good because weapon attacks work, and combo attacks and MP restorations and wall bounds and environmental attacks. Bro, you can fast travel from the map screen. Hello? The game is beyond gorgeous in that sexy HDR sheen. Hawaii looks great. The bucket list stuff makes me want to cry. I don't give a shit about Dondoko Island or Animal Crossing or any of that sort of cozy games bullshit, but I still put in the effort of getting that tuxedo because it's well done. It's cool. It's fun. You know what else? Zero Dragon Kart. Yeah, that's right. Fuck Dragon Kart for no particular reason, man. You know what else? A Chinese dub. To all of the haters out there, it is quite plain and simple that we did not play the same game. For the game I played has a beautiful story about bonds and only being able to succeed in life by understanding and nurturing these bonds. The game I played has characters that go beyond my virtual display, for they exist within my heart. The game I played has gameplay so fun that I would gladly play it until the sun extinguishes. The game I played has visuals beyond what even the thickest dictionaries can describe. The game I played has a soundtrack that, I'm not even going to get fancy with it, makes me come. For the game I played, the game I enjoyed despite others telling me not to, the game I love with all of my heart. Well, Infinite Wealth was still pretty good, but it was Final Fantasy XVI!